Welcome, everyone, to EBS. Glad to have you here with us today. My name is Steve, and I am broadcasting from home today. We're going to talk a little bit about empathy, compassionate empathy, if you will. And I wanted to start off with a story that I have shared before, which is it's always stuck in my mind just because it's has a lot of significance, I think, to me at least, of understanding this process of meditation that I try to practice on an ongoing basis. And some days are great, and other days we struggle a little bit, but we keep at it. This is an old story of a meditator who spent many lives having practiced the art of meditation to the point to where he had mastered many of the various levels of meditation. And he was recognized by many teachers, great and not so great, as being an example for all to follow. And he took great pride in that, which is fine and such. However, he got him. He worked himself up to that stage or that ability to stand at the door of initiation, that door of enlightenment. And he had climbed that mountain and had mastered all the trials and tribulations and such to get there. And finally, there he is at the door. He has worked long and hard. He has sacrificed much, given much to achieve this point of enlightenment. As he stands at that door, he steps towards it, puts one hand on the handle of the door, and he is prepared now to open it and to go through. And as he begins to open it, and as he begins to consider now stepping through and finally reaching that lifelong goal of his, something else begins to dawn in the back of his mind. And at that very moment, just before his foot was to lift off the ground and take that step across the doorway, he realizes that he's opening the door not for himself, but for others. And at that moment, that's when true enlightenment occurred, in that he was holding that door open for all those who were yet to get there. And that was kind of that last test that he had to sort of master, in a sense. The reason I like that story is that, why do we meditate? What brings us to the mat? And a lot of times, I mean, in all honesty, we do it for ourselves. It's not that necessarily selfish, but it is, what would you call it? Self-centered, in the sense of I'm meditating because I want something to occur, right? And I think that at a certain point, that you begin to open up a little bit more. And as I recently heard someone say, that truly we are all connected at a very deep level. And the closer we get to understanding that, to seeing it, to experiencing it, not just knowing it, but actually to experience it, then the closer we are to that point of deep, compassionate understanding. And with that, I've been reading this book. See if you can see it there, An Open Heart by the Dalai Lama. And it's kind of a book on a meditation of compassion and why that is such a fundamental pillar in the Buddhist practice. And he talks about that meditation basically is kind of rewiring the brain a little bit because our brain habitual thoughts that we've practiced for so long are all about ourself, how we feel, what we think, and on and so forth. He said meditation takes it off of the self and works towards putting it onto something greater than just you, that bigger picture that we all recognize and that we know is just part of it. And he talks about that the first stages of being able to open up to that bigger picture is practicing compassion. And the first stage, or an early stage of practicing compassion, is developing the practice of empathy. And I like that. I resonate with that. I understand that. I think at a certain kind of level. I know it's a good idea to be nice to others, right? And we all got that. Maybe that's kind of compassion. But I think at a deep level, compassion is something that we don't do with another person or to another person. It's something that we participate in. It's something that we innately are, and that our awareness just opens up to begin to embrace that and to see that. And so, with that thought, we kind of look at, what do we do to actively engage in that empathetic understanding of others? How do we do that? Because sometimes it's really tough to be able to cut through all the noise that our little brains carry with them all the time, to cut through all that noise and to maybe in a deeper way to see that person in a different light. And you kind of think, well, that's, well, the people that I love, we know that's easy to do. And that's just kind of, it feels very natural to us. The people that I like, a little bit harder. The people that annoy me, almost out of the question. And the people that just get under my skin, there's no way, right? That's kind of how we are in real life. And maybe when we feel that annoyance and that agitation with others, maybe that's the triggering event to remind us to practice some degree of mindfulness in regards empathetic compassion. And if we consciously practice rewiring our brains to understand empathetic compassion, then possibly all of those thoughts, those that anger, that agitation, that anxiety, perhaps all of those lessen a little bit and kind of start to go in the background somewhat. And I think that if we practice this, I think that maybe we begin to see our world in a little bit of a different light, and we get to kind of participate in a world that has a little bit of a different light than maybe what we are used to. The Tibetan culture, I've heard this several times from various people at DBS. The Tibetan culture often uses the analogy of the mother taking care of her child as an example of compassion in action. We in the West, though, have a harder time with that image because we are so acutely attuned to all of the dynamics that can go on with that mother figure. And we don't quite have that same perspective that they have of having that person in your life, the mother, showing you, teaching you, empathy and compassion. And so sometimes we in the West end up with a lot of odd messages that are given to us that we hold on to and unconsciously wrap our identities around. And thus sometimes we feel flawed or less or whatever it might be than what we really are. And so the Dalai Lama, seeing that, kind of that is a challenge we in the West might have. I think he puts special emphasis on developing that empathy and just that understanding of that other person. And so I always get the image, at least in my mind's eye, that when I think of another person and what I try to do is a person that I need to work on, or I need to work on my compassion, my empathy with that person, I see them, I try to hold them in a different light than what I normally do. And sometimes that can be quite challenging because when I think of that person, all those triggering events begin to occur. And all of those thoughts of past hurts and everything else begin to roll through my brain. And that's fair enough. That's fair game. But I think in compassionate meditation is that we see that person in front of us, we hold them in the heart, in that light, and just hold them there and stand there with them in that. We're not trying to change anything, fix anything, make something better, make something go away. All of those thoughts are kind of ego driven, right? We want to change something somehow. But instead, in this practice, it's simply standing by that person with a heart fully open, or as open as we can get there, right? Our heart fully open, and just standing there next to them and holding them in that light. And then maybe we have that opportunity to experience what that fellow had in the story, where he opens the door to walk through and he realizes he's opening the door to allow others to walk through. And maybe with practice, what happens is as we try to embrace those around us that are challenging and hold them in that light, not only do we open the door for compassion to be a part of our life, but maybe the thought is we hold that door open so that compassion can be a part of their life too, you know? And sometimes it just takes that one person to do that little bit of a difference, and then the world can shift a little bit, and it can be quite surprising, maybe at times. So today we're going to just try that. Today's meditation is very simple. We're just going to practice our breathing, settle our minds, and we're going to breathe through our heart a little bit. And this is a visualization exercise, like a guided meditation in a sense. But you breathe through your heart. You bring your breath in and you imagine breathing through your heart and that going out. And with each breath that you take, it goes a little further out and a little further out. The further as it goes out, it spreads out, if you will. And if you can kind of imagine that happening and breathe through your heart for a bit, and then take a moment and see who comes to your mind, and hold that person's image in front of you, being bathed in that light that you're breathing out, and just stand there with him. And my guess is that what might happen is the potential to stand there together in that particular light. And you might have that moment of what it really truly feels like to experience compassion directly, you know? So that's what we're going to try today. We'll see how things go. All right. If you're sitting in a chair, as I often do, or sitting on a mat, all we're going to look at is beginning to prepare ourselves for meditation. And a lot of times, that means we're just sitting up a little bit straighter. Maybe we're beginning to breathe a little bit deeper. Maybe we start to slow our minds down just a bit. And as we do this, then perhaps we begin to feel our body begin to relax and begin to open up. And maybe when this happens, we're finally in touch with our body, consciously aware of our physical self. And as I breathe in a little deeper, a little longer. And as I feel my body relax, I feel it begin to open. And with each breath, I breathe a little deeper. I become aware of my mind settling down. And now, for the next several minutes, I'm just going to practice breathing through my heart, that center of compassion. I just want to breathe through it and just open that up a little bit. Breathe in deeply. And when you breathe out through the heart. Feel that begin to open. As that begins to open, I see people that I'm connected to that are part of my life, and I focus on each person. I stand next to them, and I breathe through the heart. Just hold them in that light. Take a deep breath, open your eyes, and for a minute, let's just sit here and see if we can feel that compassion that surrounds us. So, what was interesting in an exercise like this, sometimes the people that come to mind are unexpected in a sense. I think that, like for me, my father who passed away a number of years ago, he came to mind, and I held him in that light and such. My neighbor across the street who's going through a hard time came to my mind, and I held that person, and a couple of other folks too, you know. And I kind of like that process in the sense of, I think kind of wherever I'm at, um, and whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish, if I just slow myself down and pay attention, then a lot of times I kind of have a sense of what the next step might be a little bit. And that I know that for me at least, and I think for a lot of us, is how can we go wrong in working on compassion, understanding and consciously trying to engage in empathetic, behaviors and such. And there's a lot of different your meditation practice. Everyone is different, and that your practice might focus on something else or whatever, which is fine, But every so often, it doesn't hurt to spend a little bit of time focusing on something other than yourself, focusing on something other than trying to still your thoughts or other than, whatever your particular practice is. Just think about someone else other than you and hold them in whatever kind of light that you can imagine and hold them in that and stand next to them in that kind of support. I think if we do that every so often, um, maybe, at least for me, is maybe I become a better player in my community, a better person within my family, a better father to my children. Whatever it might be for you, or whatever it might be for me, is that kind of helps me or guides me a little bit when I feel that compassion opening up in me. Um, so yeah, so it's a good practice, always is. It's one of the pillars of Buddhism and many religions. Actually, if you really get into it and read all of that, this is a pretty universal trait that we all benefit from, regardless of our backgrounds or whatever it might be. So, I hope this meditation has been of some value to you today. Like any meditation or any guided meditation or visualization exercise or whatever it might be, if you practice something and it really strikes a note within you, then pay attention to that note, listen to it, and give it a chance to say what it needs to say for a little bit, you know? And that way you kind of get to open up to that teacher within you so much. It's so easy for us to follow others in what they suggest or what they do or whatever it might be, and we should. There's a lot of very wise people out there, but sometimes we have to listen a little bit to what's happening inside and listen to that teacher and understand those lessons too. And I think maybe like today, we had that opportunity to open up our heart, and maybe that opens up our ears a little bit in a sense. So I hope it's been of value. Thank you so much for being part of our meditation family. As always, we're incredibly appreciative and look forward to seeing you guys down the road, actually at EBS. And as always, we'll continue to bring our Facebook Live meditations to you. So take care. Thank you very much.